Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. If you are a subscriber, if you are new here, welcome. My name is Bianca and I have Kaity with me here today. Kaity and I have been friends on Instagram for about a year now, right? And the two of us really share a lot of same viewpoints on spirituality and the world. And we got into a really deep discussion the other day in our DMs that I wanted to bring live because I think it's something that's very important. But before we start that, I just want, Kaity, do you want to take the time to introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bianca. So my name is Katie, and my channel is Willow_success and soul. I am kind of a intuitive spiritual guide slash coach, I guess is the best way to describe myself. My whole business and my channel is built all around setting women up for success and helping to empower women through different spiritual tools and techniques.
That's actually honestly one of the things that we've talked about, where not having like a definitive definition of what we do or who we
Yeah.
are. And I think that it's really important to be okay with that and to express that openly because a part of this conversation that we're going to have today is just falling under this definition of spirituality and what that means and being okay with the journey and not necessarily knowing essentially what things are when, or how it's going to pan out and just allowing things to happen and including how we step into our purpose in our space in the spirituality space. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that right in the beginning. But what really prompted this conversation is a couple weeks ago, I saw a big creator, somebody who has millions of followers on Instagram, and I'm sure he has more on YouTube. He's really a prominent role in the spirituality space, in coaching, in helping people awaken, and going through the spirituality journey. And he made a post the other day that I found to be very problematic, which I'm not going to call the specific creator out, but I will say what he said specifically was people right now live alive in this timeline cannot meet their highest selves without the use of plant medicine, which I found to be very problematic for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. I am personally sober. I find that my sobriety is a huge cornerstone of my own spirituality journey. I know everybody arrives in their like spiritual space in a different way. It's very independent to your own journey, your own experiences. And but for me, sobriety is a huge part of how I got here, why I'm here. And I understand that everybody has different paths. However, I find it to be very problematic in the spiritual space to be a leader and say that you cannot meet your highest self or you cannot achieve your highest timeline without the use of something external. And
Mhm.
so I created a post on Instagram and it prompted this discussion that you and I were having that I thought was very interesting. And
Mhm.
so before we get into our personal beliefs around this idea, I just want everyone to kind of get an idea of how we arrived to our journey. So tell me a little bit of a background of your spiritual journey, what major experiences that you have and what brought you to this place where you were non-spiritual before and you're awakening on the spiritual path now.
I have always been very intuitive. I think I've always been very in touch with like my gut and my feelings, but I like actually a lot of many other people I think have arrived at their kind of spiritual awakening. I was in a very abusive, toxic, narcissistic relationship that kind of put me in this rock bottom space where I realized I needed to just totally reset my life and sort of go within and do some deeper work of, why do I keep attracting these types of relationships? And I decided that I really wanted to just be at peace with myself before I would invite a partner in. And so that was kind of the lens that I started meditating and working on manifesting. And something really beautiful and wonderful happened right around that time that I was really just investing a lot of time in meditation and focusing on myself and doing a lot of really deep work to uncover like why I was attracting these kind of negative people and patterns into my life. And so I was asleep and I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a spirit next to my bed, and that I could see with my own eyes. And I remember like sitting up and looking over, and I could see that he was like a middle-aged man, and I could see his bald head. And he had his hands in this kind of praying position at the side of my bed. And I remember him just saying, like, I need your help. I need your help. And I wasn't afraid. But I remember thinking, like, I don't want to deal with whatever this is right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't prepared to fully take that on. And so I just kind of laid back down and rolled away from him. And I went back to sleep, which I'm sorry, to him. He was begging for help, and I just wasn't in a space where I could take that on. But I remember calling my mom the next day saying, like, this was really odd. I don't know what this means. And a week later, we went to this kind of spiritual day retreat down in Tucson, Arizona. And the first event of the day was a morning meditation. And so we went into this morning meditation, and I sat down and I started to feel this kind of overwhelming, like, vibration throughout my whole body, almost like it had too much coffee, like this very
Mm.
jittery, excited feeling. And it was honestly uncomfortable. It was a really uncomfortable full body experience. And we started this meditation, which was 40 minutes long. So it was going to be a pretty long experience. And immediately I'm seeing images again of that man who was next to my bed, and I'm hearing his voice kind of in my mind saying, I need you to talk to her. I need you to tell her that I love her. I need you to tell her that I miss her. And I was sitting there, as most people I think would, of being like, is this real? Am I making this up in my head? Am I crazy? Am I going
Right.
nuts in
Right.
this meditation class? And by the end of that 40 minutes, like, his voice was just getting louder and louder, and he kept telling me and kind of begging me to tell her, that he was there. And so it got to this point where I decided I need to speak up because I need to know and validate this.
Right.
Is this real, or am I just
Right.
being crazy here? So at the end of this meditation, I raised my hand and I said, this might sound crazy, but did anyone on this side of the room lose someone? He's middle-aged and bald. And that was really all I had to go off of, because I didn't know enough then to like ask him his name or ask for other things. I was just receiving his messages. And he had also been showing me flashes of the room opposite of me. So I kind of had an idea that this person was somewhere over there. The woman sitting right next to my mother, actually right across from me, looked at me and said, "That's my husband." And she started crying, and I started crying, and the whole room was
It's
shocked.
really interesting,
And
really interesting. And this
yeah,
experience, I guess, opened up the gateway for you to
oh,
start.
yes.
Where did you go from here? Like, you had this
Mhm.
obviously very a real experience, completely sober in the morning during a meditation, and
Yeah,
also while you were sleeping,
yeah.
spirit came to you. And in this moment, you're thinking to yourself, am I crazy? Am I crazy?
Mhm.
This to me is the biggest thing with using outside help to help facilitate getting
Mhm.
into a spiritual journey, because there is so much of the spiritual journey where we question ourselves
Yes.
whether we are crazy or not, because things are happening
Mhm.
that logically do not make sense frequently
Yeah, very
in
true.
the journey.
Yeah.
And we want to, as human beings, put logic on things and want to be able to also be in a place where it's easy to be like, well, that was me just drinking, or maybe I imagined that. I
Mhm.
think that in the beginning of our spiritual journey, a lot of the times we say we're crazy. That's not really happening. I'm imagining that.
Yeah.
So the use of plant medicine to start a spiritual journey, one of the problematic things I really find, in my opinion, would be whether you could trust that experience to be your spiritual
100%.
experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you are using a consciousness altering, albeit has a lot of historical tradition to
Hmm.
it. I'm not saying that it is bad. There's not a good or bad. I'm just saying that there would be in my own mind a little piece of, well, do I believe that because this experience was elicited through this pathway that
Hmm.
was where I altered my consciousness purposely to get to this place.
Hmm.
So like talk to me a little bit about like how you go from having an experience and thinking, oh my God, I'm crazy. There's no way I'm talking to spirit. This has never happened before.
Yeah.
To then being like, okay, now, I'm accepting that I'm a medium and I can tap into spirit and
Mhm.
people come to me to talk to me. How do you get from A to Z?
A lot of work. So, as you can imagine, after that experience, it honestly sent me into a bit of an existential crisis because I put the pieces together of this ghost or spirit visited me a week before I
Mm-hmm.
was there in the room with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
How did he know I was going to be there a week later in the same room as his wife, first thing in the morning? And
Mm-hmm.
so that really sent me down a journey of like, I don't know anything.
Right.
I don't know anything. There's so many beautiful, wonderful things that we don't understand. And I was very lucky that I got in touch with a psychic medium who actually works down at that property in Tucson. That same day, I was actually able to chat with her. The timing was perfect that she was hosting a mediumship class.
But that's the kind of stuff that's like crazy,
Exactly.
right? Like things
It's
unfold in this
perfect.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, divine timing. Absolutely. And so I was able to, a couple weeks later, that class started, and I was able to do the work and kind of uncover so many more things about my gifts, work with other women who were also going through a similar experience of they were awakening their gifts. And it was just a very safe space to be able to do this. And at the time, I was single. And so I would spend hours meditating in my apartment. I was journaling. I was doing a lot of really deep work to just identify, again, like those different patterns and things as I was kind of awakening to all these new beautiful things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent the past few years actually working with a mentor who is also a psychic medium who I met through that class. He was partnered with the woman that I met down in Tucson. And and so I feel very lucky that I've been able to kind of navigate all of this and ask someone questions of like, is this normal or what does this mean? And that's led me to now this place where I want to help other women
Mm-hmm.
also have that safe space to experience their own awakening, to be able to ask questions and get clear answers and get that reassurance that no, you're not crazy. What you're
Yeah.
experiencing is something really profound and beautiful and real.
The
Yeah.
thing that you don't want to question when you're
Yes.
going through the spiritual experience is whether it's real or not, because that question is the first question we are encountering when we're going through the experience. And to give a little bit of background about mine, I wholeheartedly believe that I would not have gone through my awakening if I had not decided to become sober. And becoming sober, I think, was a part of my own spiritual journey.
Yeah.
For me, it's very easy to stay sober because once I went through my spiritual awakening, I really connected the dots of like sobriety is part of my journey. So it's almost not even a difficult thing for me to continue to be because it's just a part of my essence, my actual soul. And so I decided to become sober for matrix reasons, right? Like I just was finding myself not being as not present, because that wasn't the term that I would use before my awakening, but I just didn't have access to myself in terms of how much I wanted to do in the day, how much I wanted to function. I was finding I was taking more time out of the day than not, and I had my daughter, and I also am a product of an alcoholic mother, and I just didn't. I wanted
Mhm.
to break that generational lineage
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
alcoholic mothers in my ancestral line. I did it with when I became sober, I did it with my intention really was just to become a better mother and to have more time out of the day. It wasn't till about a year into my sobriety that things started happening that led to my awakening. And everything happened in a very spontaneous manner. And the reason why I find sobriety to be so important is because if I wasn't sober, I first of all would have not noticed the signs. And secondly, I would have just chalked it all up to like being drunk, or not, just like maybe I didn't remember that, or I'm just crazy. Because when spirit is asking you to awaken, they're not subtle. Right, they're not
Yeah.
subtle.
Yeah.
I
So
was
true.
getting messages. I was being bombarded by messages. Like
Hmm.
it was like my Instagram algorithm was different. It was showing me different things. All of a sudden, I was starting to
Yeah.
get spiritual stuff on my Instagram that I had never seen before. I'd never gone into my algorithm, had never touched it. I was seeing, I know that a lot of people see repeating numbers, but it wasn't like a
Yes.
repeating number thing. It was more like I kept seeing the same words places and the same terms. And it was like terms and words I'd never seen before. And I started looking things up. And then in my journey, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening.
Hmm. Do you want to
And
explain kind of
yes,
what that looks and feels like?
yeah. So it's interesting because Kundalini is something that I had no idea what that was, and even when I experienced it, I had no idea what that was. It wasn't until was talking about it with somebody, maybe like weeks, months later, they were like, "That's what you had," and it was a mentor that I had paid to help me like kind of talk sense into my
Hmm.
experience because I felt like I was going crazy. And essentially, what it is, it's the rise of the energy from the base of your spine at the root chakra all the way up to your crown chakra. And the energy starts down at the root chakra and kind of spreads out like an electric bolt. Is I think the easiest way to explain it. So you really actually feel electricity go through your body, like a charge go through your body, and it opens up all your chakras. The way it's described, and this is like an ancient Hindu, Indian, Buddhist experience. So there are chronicles of people experiencing this. There is a lot of times people go to the ER because they don't know what's happening to them, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with their body, and then they find out later that they're having this very deep spiritual experience. And essentially, it's the life force energy moving through your body, opening up all your chakras, and kind of rewiring your DNA to get ready for this new spiritual part, like bringing in more light, like moving your body through the 4D dimension to 5D, just kind of
Yeah.
getting your body physically ready.
And was that painful?
It was not painful for me. And because it was a spontaneous awakening, my body, my spirit, my DNA, my chakras were ready. And so it happened spontaneously. And then it happened the one time, which was an amazing experience. The way it happened for me and the way I like to describe it is I felt the energy move through, and then I had to lay down, and then I felt completely at peace. The way when we were talking about this before, the way you hear
Mhm.
other people describe what it feels like to pass on
Mm.
into the different dimension where there's no pain and you kind of just feel light.
Yeah.
And it just feels good in the other dimension. There's not this density and this like what we deal with every day. I felt that for a good 2 to 3 days.
That's
And it was
amazing.
an amazing experience. And you kind of just feel light and like
Hmm.
nothing's a problem and everything is great. But there are people who try to induce Kundalini awakening. They hear about, and this is part of the discussion that I want to
Right,
have, right?
right.
There are
Yeah.
people who hear about spiritual experiences and then try to induce spiritual experiences through
Hmm.
the use of whatever we have available here. And when you do that Kundalini yoga is something that is practiced for centuries, right? It's very regarded. But if you're not practicing it correctly under the guidance of a mentor, somebody who
Hmm.
has a lot of experience with it. I have heard people have very painful experiences with Kundalini because
Hmm.
essentially what you're trying to do is awaken the life force energy in your body when your body and your chakras may not be ready to receive that much energy, because it does
Mhm.
literally feel like an electric bolt going through your body. So this is what I really want to talk about, and I think it's an
Mhm.
interesting conversation to have. Is obviously there are spontaneous awakenings that are happening all the time, especially right now in this timeline that we're in. We're finding that people are waking up more and more every day. We are in the great awakening, the shift. I did a video about this a few months ago with somebody else. And every day you see more and more people, if not awakening, at least buying into the concepts of
Yeah.
spirituality. Whereas it used to be kind of woo woo, but things are making themselves mainstream, right? The energy of rocks are making themselves mainstream. Like the idea of different dimensions, quantum physics, astrology, which I feel like used to be kind of just what you read in magazines,
Yeah.
is now a little bit more. People are taking that
Mhm.
with a little bit more credence. So people are awakening more and more every day, and then you have this creator who's saying that he doesn't believe that in this day and age, in this timeline, with everything that's happening, the shift, people being more aware and buying into the concepts of spirituality and the spiritual space, and he's saying that we cannot meet our highest timeline or our highest selves unless we use a consciousness altering plant. And my opinion is this, my belief is this. I'm not saying that the use of it is bad. I understand that there is lots of historical and deep meaning for tribes, and it's been around for a really long
Mhm.
time, and used in its proper way can help with some healing. What I see a lot of in the spirituality space right now is this idea of what spirituality is, and then this person who wants to achieve spiritual experiences like
Mhm.
we had spontaneously.
Yeah.
And instead of doing the work of what spiritual people really have to do, is when we have these experiences, then we have to make sense of the experiences and do the work. They want to elicit these experiences without the work through outside help.
Mhm.
And I find this to be very problematic.
And what might happen, let's say you've never done any sort of work and you go and you have one of these experiences. What happens after?
The thing is I can't speak to that, right? Because
Mhm.
I have never used ayahuasca. I've never tried to induce kundalini like that. It just flowed naturally.
Mhm.
What I want people to think about is the work that we have to do to get to a spiritual place is we have the experiences, and the experiences of what people talk about, right? You hear about the kundalini experience, and then you hear that I'm in this place that's magical and great for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And you're like, that sounds amazing. I want to achieve that. Or you hear about these ayahuasca retreats and people meet themselves, or they have some deep healing, and then you want to experience that, so you go do that. And there are good and bad experiences for people because you are either ready or you're not ready to meet that part of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's the point of the spirituality experience happening in a spontaneous way. Is it happens when your body and your mind and your soul are ready for you to wake up. And when you are ready to wake up, you have the experience. But what people don't talk about, or what people don't see, is what you need to go through after the experience in order to integrate that into your life.
Yeah.
Because what you talked about was having this amazing, like, okay, I'm connecting to spirit. And then after you said, what did you say? It was like my
I
whole
had an
life.
existential
Yes, I
crisis.
had an
Yeah.
existential crisis. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I went through these 3 days where I felt like everything was at peace, and I felt really great, and
Mhm.
maybe on a different dimension, probably. But then after that, I went through like 2 years of depression. So I think that people are seeking this experience, uneducated in the integration that needs to happen with it. And you're seeing that people are seeking out the experience over and over and using the crutch of the experience and not doing the work that spirituality actually takes for you to ascend and to
Mhm.
hold that frequency without the use of outside thing. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
So I've never used plant medicine. I've never been drawn to any sort of mind-altering substances. I'm the type of person that I will have an occasional drink once in a while. But to be honest, even with having a drink now, limit that as well because I notice that I'm not as connected to spirit when I have a drink. And so I fully believe that honestly, like being sober is one of the best ways to connect with spirit because there's nothing, like you said earlier, there's nothing clouding your mind. There's nothing that you have to question about whether your experience is real or if it's being affected or altered by something else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of exposure to plant medicine. I've never been called to it.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard, is really the only people who should seek it out are the ones who are truly being called to use it, not because it's a trend or something that some influencer says online. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that everyone is able to unlock their higher self on their own. And, you know, what that influencer was saying of how like you can't meet your higher self without plant medicine, that's false
Mm-hmm.
because I've met my higher self through meditation without the use of anything,
Right.
without plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone that's ready to go on this spiritual path, this spiritual journey, I always say that it's so important to meditate. And a lot of people, I think, find it uncomfortable to meditate. They can't sit with themselves, with their own thoughts. But really beautiful and wonderful things happen when you can actually meditate and still your mind. You'll notice feelings, sensations. You'll be able to recognize where your own kind of body and soul and energy ends and where other things might be coming in. You'll
Mm-hmm.
start to notice, images or thoughts or sounds, colors, voices
Mm-hmm.
that aren't yours. And you'll be able to identify, like, oh, that actually is, spirit speaking to me. This is someone's, past loved one who's got a message coming through. And so I think it's really important for anyone starting their journey who's drawn, or even if they're considering going on, a plant medicine journey, like really taking time to do the work and meditating and looking within is the most impactful thing I think you can do
Yeah.
starting out.
It's this whole concept of us as people needing something external in order for
Mhm.
us to start our journey, I think is what has been very problematic in the spiritual space. I
Mhm.
think as the popularity of trying to induce your spirituality through ayahuasca and in other forms just rises, you see more and more people trying to have these experiences without realizing that the experiences need to, in order for you to actually meet yourself, your highest self, it's not the experience itself. It's not the
Mhm.
ayahuasca itself that is going to have you meet your highest self. It is the work that you're going to do to integrate it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one of the comments I saw on a recent post was that somebody used ayahuasca between 30, they said 30 and 40 times, and they said it was absolutely amazing and it helped them achieve XYZ in their journey. This is, I think, what we're seeing a lot of in spirituality is this concept of what spiritual person is, this
Mhm.
idea of what a spiritual person is, and
Yeah.
they're like connected to the earth, and they're like bohemian, and they smoke pot, and they're at the beach all day, and they got dreads. I
Yeah.
don't know, whatever this idea is, right? We're not what that pulls away from, although it's fun, and sometimes there are people who fall into that, and there's no judgment around it.
Mhm.
This idea of who this person is pulling from the work that actual spirituality takes,
Yeah.
which is really meeting yourself. That's what the spiritual journey is meeting yourself. And if you are unable to do the work in healing, in taking a look at your shadows, at your own triggers, the things that are causing you to judge other people, then you're not actually doing the work to meeting your highest self.
Mhm.
Because that's the work, which is meditation, which a lot of people circumvent, because it's this concept of sitting with yourself and allowing the thoughts to come up.
Yeah.
That's what sobriety did for me,
Mhm.
and that's why a lot of people become religious or spiritual in sobriety, because they're finally able to sit with their thoughts and allow their thoughts to occur. I think when you start, whether you are doing this spontaneously or it's like something that interests you and you want to kind of go down the path,
Mhm.
there is this idea of who this person is, right? Like you're at the beginning of your path, and you always look over there and you're like, that's the person that I need to become. And through the, and I say this too when I'm coaching people, I mean, nobody knows 100% of the answers, right? None of us are like, even what I say, like, I want you to take what I say and use your own discernment, connect with your own highest self, and decide whether this is true for you or not. Some of us are farther along our path than others, right? So some of us have more experience than others, just with our journey. And so as we get to a certain part of our journey, then we look back and we say, okay, now it's time to help pull, right? That's why you see a lot of people in the spiritual space get into healing, get into coaching, because
Mm-hmm.
we've gotten to a certain point where we're like, okay, we understand who we are now and what this purpose is, and now it's time to help the people behind us. And so you have this idea of like where you're going and who you want to be, and at a certain part of your journey, you go, okay, this is who I am, and I'm meeting myself, and that person is still not, I'm still not that person. So you start to question yourself in this identity of, am I spiritual enough to be spiritual? Because you look
Yeah.
at spirituality as an identity, and this identity has been constructed by our society of how it
Mm-hmm.
needs to look and feel. And so then you start to have this judgment of yourself and judgment of
Mm-hmm.
others, of who's spiritual and who's not. Like, who's spiritual enough to be talking about spirituality and who's not, and how do
Yeah.
they look and how do they act. And
Yeah.
then you start to get to this point to where you're like, okay, the identity is not what we've created as a society. The identity is meeting your highest self and standing in your own authenticity with that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're starting your journey and you have somebody who is very far on their journey, has a huge following, has been coaching in the space for years, is, as is like credited in the community, saying that you cannot meet your highest self unless you use plant medicine, I find to be just disappointing,
Mm-hmm.
because the whole point of spirituality is to go down this path of self exploration and meeting yourself. And there are multiple paths. I'm not saying that ayahuasca is not going to be good for somebody. I just don't think it is the only solution. And I
Yeah.
don't think that it should ever be a starting place. I think
Mm-hmm.
that it should, if you decide that it's something that is necessary on your journey, there needs to have been some sort of integration and some sort of work to be done prior to doing this for the first time, or to like be a part of the spiritual community, because there are risks involved
Mm-hmm.
in opening up that level of consciousness when you may or may not be ready for it. Also, even if you do ayahuasca, if you're not doing the work to integrate it, that's why you're needing to do it 30, 40 times, because the work that you don't see that a lot of us do to get to the space that we're able to look back and say, okay, now I'm ready to help other people, is the work that we're doing when we're alone, when we're sober, when we're meditating, when we're listening to ourselves, when we're listening to the thoughts that come in, when we're starting to notice the sensations coming into our body, when we're, and this takes years. This is not a single experience. I can't say
Yeah.
this was like, yeah, I can talk about my Kundalini experience, and you can talk about your experience of waking up and sitting at the bed and seeing spirit, but that's a single experience that happened, and then there was years of work of integration of what that
Mm-hmm.
even meant, and
Yeah.
then experiences happening after that. And so just to be very weary, what I want to do is just want to put people in a place of empowerment and say, if this is a journey that you want to go down, that's 100% a journey that you can meet yourself without any help, even from coaches. You
Yeah.
don't need a coach. You don't
Yeah.
need anything outside of yourself. Coaches are here to help provide space for your healing, maybe help point out places where you're not aware of your shadow self. Also provide a space where you don't feel alone, but you don't ever need anything
Yeah.
outside of your own self on this journey. And that's really
Yeah.
the core of why I wanted to have this conversation with you
Mm-hmm.
online, because that's kind of where we agree, right?
Yes, I think as well, if you're sitting there meditating, journaling, the answers will come to you. You don't need any outside source to come and tell you. You're going to be on this journey of self-discovery, and these answers are going to come through, whether that's messages or synchronicities and things that you're seeing, or something catches your attention and you go investigate it and learn more about something. To your point, it's like you'll notice a word keeps coming up or something keeps entering kind of your field of vision, and you go on a journey to investigate what that means, and then you're learning a whole new aspect of spirituality through your own discovery and through your own journey. Something else I wanted to touch on as well is people who are spiritual don't come in some one size fits all box or look. I have an extremely corporate background. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
went to university, I've been in the corporate world my whole career,
Mm-hmm.
and yet here I am, and I can incorporate, this spirituality, this journey that I'm on, into how I'm leading other people, how I'm teaching other people in my work. And so it's not something as well that also needs to be separate. Like, if you are in a space where you feel like, oh, well, I'm not spiritual enough, or,
Mm-hmm.
I don't work in a field where I can be spiritual. That's just also not true. And that's part of that journey. Is there's always ways that you can incorporate this, compassion or empathy or coaching or love, or, whatever is coming up in your journey, and how spirit is moving through you. You can
Mm-hmm.
always incorporate that into any aspect of your life, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is also where coaches can be helpful, of helping you to kind of connect to those dots of like, how can spirituality work, within your life.
Mm-hmm.
Your life doesn't have to look like anyone else's online.
Yeah. I think that's a really important message, very important message, because we do get caught up on labels and identity and appearances. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, this idea of what a spiritual person looks, acts like is all programming based off of what we've seen.
Hmm.
And you can be a super spiritual person and still be in corporate. We all have different paths, we all have different reasons why we've chosen to wake up, and how we've chosen to use our essence to help with the shift in consciousness. You and I share similar backgrounds. We're both from corporate.
Yeah.
I decided that I could not be in corporate anymore, but that is my path.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea that when you are on your journey, just to listen to yourself, right? We want to be able to know all the answers right away. But what's beautiful about the spiritual journey is that it's never ending. You never reach a point. You're just continuously discovering.
Yeah.
And even yesterday, I was just shopping, and I like to stop into like metaphysical shops wherever I'm at, just to see if
Yeah.
there's like a rock or something that I like. And it was the first time ever that I've stepped into a shop, and I stepped into an area of the shop, and I felt kind of like this something. I felt something, like something was
Mm.
like kind of like
Hmm.
calling my attention. And I was like, that's interesting, because I've never actually felt that. And that is something that is new. So now I'm like, okay, now I felt that once. How do I explore that? Then there's work involved, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't just, you don't just one day wake up and you're a medium. You don't
Yeah.
one day wake up and I have like all my clairs online, like clairs meaning like clairvoyance or
Hmm.
clairaudience. You can hear things,
Hmm.
those kinds of things that you hear. You don't wake up one day like That's So Raven. Did you ever watch that growing up?
Yes.
Then all of a sudden you're like having these
Yeah.
visions.
Uh-huh.
It's these little experiences. It was a very little experience that I think most people would even just chalk it up as like, oh, that's weird. Like I just got a weird like pain in my
Hmm.
forehead or in my brain, whatever it was, like a headache even.
Yeah.
But I noticed it hit me when I hit this certain spot at the store, and then as soon as I left that spot at the store, then it was gone. So I was like, and then it didn't happen for the rest of the day. So it's things like that, to become aware of sensations and things that are happening to you. They're so
Mhm.
subtle sometimes that you have to really be in a trusting place. And if you are inducing these experiences, it's hard to trust what is an experience that was meant for you to have as
Mhm.
connection with spirit, and what was induced by the medicine itself.
Yeah, I would love to explore as well without using plant medicine, knowing that you can trust kind of in your day to day, outside of, an ayahuasca experience. You're living your normal life. What are some things that, if you're tuned into these different gifts, like what are some ways that you might be guided, or some different, maybe interesting things that come up through doing the work. Like even in your own coaching work, like how do you feel like your gifts are coming through to help women because you're sober, because you're in this space every day and you've put in the work?
That's an interesting question because the huge part of the spiritual journey is trust,
Mm-hmm.
right? Trusting in yourself, trusting in your experiences, trusting what you're feeling, seeing, hearing, believing,
Mm-hmm.
what feels good to you. And this unfolds, it unfolds, right? It's not like
Yes.
this one day you wake up and it's like you have this knowing or you have this trust, and it happens because one thing happens and then another thing happens and then you start to pay attention to it and then you're like, are like, you know. And so in the beginning, I didn't wake up and was like, I have clairs. The clairs are the five senses that are metaphysical. So
Mm-hmm.
clairvoyance is the one that we hear all the time, being able to see
Yep.
the future or see things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Clairaudience we hear a lot too, which is being able to hear voices or talk to
Yep.
spirit. There is clairsentient, which is being able to feel sensations. There's claircognizant, which is what I believe that my primary clair is, which is this just knowing. I just know. So things kind of drop into me as knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
it feels very much like my own knowledge. So that I would say is my primary clair. Did I have my Kundalini experience and say I'm claircognizant? No, I think it took me probably a year and a half for me to even trust the idea that I might be claircognizant.
Mm-hmm.
How I came to the point to where I decided that I was claircognizant was I've always, in my entire life, just had this abundant knowledge. And people would frequently ask me,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know that? And I would just say, I don't know. I used to say common sense. It's common sense. Like I would just put A and B together. Like it makes so much
Yep.
sense to me. I just know it. Like I just know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you not know that?
Mm-hmm.
And so because I've always had this, when I started stepping into spirituality, then my knowing kind of became like I just started to pay attention to it more, right? Like what is my own logic and what are things that spirit is telling me that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started doing my coaching, I think that's when I really started to trust it because someone would talk to me and I would just give them the answer and then they would integrate that in their life and they would come back and they would say that is exactly what I needed. And it wasn't like this thing popped into my head and I had this vision. It was just kind of like coming out of me via conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, this is what you need to do. And I feel very, very strongly about knowing that this is the path that you need to take. And then people take the path and then that's validated on my path that is what spirit was telling me that they
Mm-hmm.
needed to do. And so again, going back to using outside sources is you can't really rely on outside things to develop that kind of knowing or that trust within yourself because it's a process of deciding which one your main clair is. We all have access to all of our clairs. Even if you wanted to become a medium, you could. We all have access to that. It's whether or
Yep.
not we want to work to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do come in a little bit more in tune than others with the frequency, but that isn't to say that you can't develop, you can't work through and achieve that frequency with the work. And that's the
Yep.
work we talk about. I mean, like, why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience? Because mine's a little bit more, I feel like medium. When people hear
Mm-hmm.
medium, they're like really more interested in what that looks like.
I would say that, yeah, I definitely have like the mediumship piece. And I define that as like both being able to connect to spirit and hearing messages from like what a lot of us in the spiritual community define as like our guides, our spirit guides. I've had visitations from my own like relatives who have passed away, which I'm so grateful for, and it's such a gift. But I also will get messages from other people's. relatives who have passed away, even through things like a Zoom call, which is pretty wild. And this is part of that unfolding of, I'll get kind of a vibration, on one side of my head, and it's kind of like a little tap of like something else is going on here. And if I kind of give that attention and tune in, I can actually, figure out like if I'm in even a whole group Zoom call, I can pinpoint like, oh, it's this person's relative in this, box on the screen. I would say as well, definitely the that intuition piece of like knowledge just kind of drops in. And that's really present for me, especially when I do things like tarot. But even things, I don't know where it is, but I have this little coin that has yes and no. And so sometimes I'll do, kind of little coin flips for people and have them ask a yes or no question. But the thing is, I already know, like the flipping of it is just kind of that extra fun layer. And maybe an element for people of like, oh, that's just, fate or it's chance or, however they want to think about it. But 99% of the time before I even flip it based on their question, I already know what the answer is. There's also a really strong intuition about people. And I think you and I have kind of touched on this as well with my own, I guess, journey. I can very quickly identify who's authentic. I can get, from people's energy, who's authentic. And even, scrolling through social media, you can get an energy read on people, especially people who are claiming to be mediums or people who are claiming to do certain work. I feel like people who have done the work and are very authentic in their energy, you can tell right away who is sort of posturing or falsifying, I would even say to some degree. I do believe that there, are people out there who maybe are just starting to awaken some of their gifts, who are really putting themselves online, who maybe should be doing a little more work first before going out there. But even things like if someone is sending me really negative energy or kind of saying like no, even through Zoom, I'll get like a sensation of like a really strong feeling that to me is kind of a flag of like, okay, they really disagree with what I'm saying, or they're sending something negative to me. And so I could just go on and on about all these different kind of experiences. But yeah, I would say for me, I can see things with my kind of third eye. I've had a couple experiences where, like with that man, I saw just with my normal eyes while I was sitting up awake. I hear things, I feel things. Sometimes people will also smell things as well, like if they're channeling someone's past, loved one who passed away who like smoked a lot, they might all of a sudden smell, cigarette smoke or something to let them know that they're there.
And I know that we're coming up at the hour here, so
Hmm.
I want to wrap it up. But basically, what the point of the conversation is, I wanted to bring online two people who have had profound spiritual experiences without the use of anything other than trusting the process of the spiritual
Yeah.
experience. So, if you're somebody who is newly awakening and you feel like you're seeing a lot of these messages about needing to do something, the only thing you need to do is be patient with yourself and just kind of go through the process and trust yourself through the process. When we talk about doing the work is literally just taking the time to pay attention to
Hmm.
yourself
Yes.
and to heal through the parts of you that aren't not experiencing love, right? Like the blockages that are not experiencing
Mhm.
where you feel fear and lack of security and judgment of others and hate even of yourself. That's when we say, okay, that's something that you need to look internally and heal and
Yeah.
heal through. Some people use ayahuasca and other things to heal, but again, it's not a solution. I think it might be a gateway, but the work still needs to be done on the other
Hmm.
side in order for you to integrate that into your life. If you're somebody who's seeking spiritual experiences, you can seek that through the work. And when your
Hmm.
body and your soul is ready for it, then you will start to feel and see and hear the experiences that we hear. But it isn't like these magical things that occur that I feel like when we hear about ayahuasca and we hear about Kundalini and stuff
Hmm.
like that. We really want they're sensationalized in this magical experience that
Hmm.
people want to attain. Really what it means is that, our the Kundalini just meant for me that my body and soul was like, okay, you got to do this now. It was kind of for me, I think I might have been circumventing it a little bit longer than I should have.
Hmm.
But for the ayahuasca, I want to just empower people and let you know that you don't need anything outside of yourself to
Hmm.
meet your highest self, your highest timeline, in any lifetime, but especially
Yep.
in this one. He said especially in this timeline you need it, and I think especially in this timeline you don't. I
Yeah.
have like a completely opposite belief because we are in this
Hmm.
timeline of awakening. We are in the timeline of awakening. So, like,
Right.
why would we need that? Well, thank you, Kaity, for taking the time to speak with me today. I think this was wonderful. Why don't you let everybody know how it is that they can work with you, how they can reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah, so thank you, Bianca. This has been great. And if anyone is feeling interested to reach out to me, first of all, the type of work that I do is similar to Bianca, but a little bit different. So I run a manifesting workshop that's completely free, where we'll kind of dissect and uncover areas of your life that really need attention and focus. And then I do offer additional coaching beyond that to really dig deep into the different fears and blockages that might be holding you back and align you with a specific kind of dream that you have or the goal that you have that you want to manifest into your life. So we do kind of the work up front and then really dig deep beyond that to help you feel like you're really moving towards whatever this dream that you have for your life is, and I'll help you along the way. We'll do some guided meditations and other work, and then I also do offer tarot readings. So if we want to dig deeper into, a question, gaining clarity, I also do tarot readings where we go through your entire year to come. So those are always really cool to reflect on and kind of get an idea of what your journey will look like going forward. And then I do also offer mediumship readings. So if you are looking to connect with someone who has passed over, you're looking to get a message from them, we can sit down and do just a really beautiful chat together and uncover any messages that might be waiting for you on the other side. And then, like Bianca and I have talked, I'm also just open to anyone who is looking to just have someone to talk to about all these different elements of their journey, talking about different things that maybe they are, confused about or want to know more about. So I'm always open to just chatting in general. But people can reach out to me. My handle on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube is Willow_success and soul. And we'll tag it somewhere below. And then my email is hello@thewillowventure.com if anyone feels more comfortable just sending an email versus reaching out on social media. I think it was just really important for you and I to get on here. And although we don't have millions of subscribers right now, to just shed light on another way to bring forth, another side that I think isn't talked about as much and open up a dialogue around our experiences and just show that what this person is claiming isn't accurate because otherwise we wouldn't have had these amazing, beautiful experiences. We would have needed that. And that's just not the case. And so, although that might be their own belief and their own experience, that's not everyone's experience. And I think it's just really important that we brought this message forth and really dug into the different types of experiences that you can have and that you don't need plant medicine to have this incredible journey, this incredible awakening to access these different gifts. And the last piece of what I'd want to say on that is that it's also about your intention. If you set forth on this journey and you truly want to uncover this deeper knowing within yourself, to be unfolding these different layers of why we're here, or these different experiences of being human and also connecting to spirit and the other side. There's so many beautiful ways that you can connect. We talked about meditation, but the internet is vast and there's so many different ways that people can be researching how to start kind of unlocking these parts of themselves. For anyone that's interested or curious, go be curious. Go search out all this information. There's books, there's different people similar to us who also talk about all these different ways to awaken without plant medicine. But I think it's important that more people come to this space and show another way.
Yeah. And the work that I do with women is I don't necessarily help women awaken, but my whole mission and purpose is to help connect women with their highest timeline, with their highest
Hmm.
self. That is the transformation. That's the quantum leaping that I talk about. It's connecting with your highest version. And we can do that in a space where you're not even necessarily spiritual. I work with women who are very spiritually connected. One of the women I was working with the other day, she's a medium, but I also work with, women who are just having difficult time with connecting with their purpose or even understanding spirituality at all.
Hmm.
And the whole concept of that is that we can achieve our highest self whether we are connected to spirit or not, because we are always connected to spirit. And if we have this intention, and if you do want to set this intention and you do want to open your clairs or be more
Hmm.
divinely connected or start this exploration of spirituality, all you have to do is really set the intention and ask for help
Yep.
from yourself, because our guides are always there, whether we are connected to them, whether we feel connected to them or not.
Hmm.
They're always there, they're always watching, and they will help us if we ask for help. So if you literally just say, I want help opening up my spirituality path, and then just be patient with yourself and trust the things
Hmm.
and the experiences that are coming to you, then that path will start to open up for you. But you have to set the intention to open the path. And
Hmm.
if you want to open the path, using a altering consciousness altering, plan, I really struggle around what to call it, because what I really want to call it is a drug, because essentially at the
Hmm.
end of the day it classifies itself as a drug in terms of the spirituality space, because you have access to everything that you need within yourself.
Hmm.
This can be a sort of backdoor way to achieve what it is that you want out of spirituality, and it may not open the right doors for you. And so that's why you hear about a lot of people having negative experiences and maybe purging too much or meeting the things that they weren't ready to meet, because
Yeah.
this is the journey is a journey, and it unfolds, as we say, because it's meant to be one foot in front of the other, not this kind of like thrown in the deep end of the pool. And so I just want to leave everybody with that you're empowered to experience everything that we've experienced on your own without the help of anything else other than
Hmm.
yourself. It's just about setting the intention and then going forth on that journey and doing the work. And the work that we do is meditation is one that you hear a lot of, but it's really just integration, just being aware of our own behaviors, our habits, our actions, and how we don't want to be, though, and how we do want to be, and what we're doing differently to achieve the things we want to achieve and meet our higher self. And that's all can be done without opening up any spiritual channels. You can do that
Yeah.
just by bringing awareness and healing is
Hmm.
really the two main things that you need to do to meet your higher self in this timeline: bringing awareness and healing.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful, and I'm glad that we took this time
Yeah.
to
Thank you for taking the
discuss.
time to
Yeah.
chat with me. And if you want to work with me, my handle is at Bianca Swikard. I'm currently offering free coaching sessions for women who are interested. If you're interested in a free coaching session with me, I'll put the link down in the description below of what that entails and how to book that with me as well. But thank you for taking the time with me
Thank
today,
you.
Katie. This was a really fun discussion, and I hope that it connects with the right person in realizing that us as women, we don't need anything outside of our own damn selves to meet our own damn selves, right?
So true. So true. Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
bye.